My name is John Leverett. I'm the defensive line coach of the Minnesota Vikings. This is my 39th season in coaching, and I've had a vast amount of experience. My first 7 years was spent as a high school coach in the state of Kansas. I was a head coach most of the time and worked with every area. Then I was an offensive line coach and head coach in small college for 9 years, encompassing every area. Then I was an offensive line coach for major universities for 5 years. Then I was a defensive line coach 1 year in the Canadian League, a running back coach for Bum Phillips and New Orleans Saints for 5 years, the defensive line coach for Coach Ditka and Chicago Bears for 7 years, offensive line coach 2 years with Wade and the Denver Broncos, and presently with Coach Dennis Green, I'm the defensive line coach in my 3rd season. During those years, I've had the experience to work with great football players, especially defensive linemen, and great coaches who taught me a lot about pass rush. The things that we're going to demonstrate and show you today relative to drills are exactly what we do in the Vikings training camp. If you come and watch us practice, this is what you will see. We think these things are vital to teaching young defensive linemen, old defensive linemen, veteran linemen, anybody that's trying to learn the proper pass rush fundamentals and techniques are going to employ these drills if they're with us. In this tape, we will try to demonstrate to you the proper way to do pass rush games or stunts. As a defensive line coach, you will find that your linemen prefer to rush one-on-one throughout the football game. They're always saying on the sideline, "Coach, I can whip him. I've got him set up. He's ready for this move or that move." And that's true sometimes. But there comes a point in the game where you're not having much success with a one-on-one rush. You need to have a change-up. The purpose of the game is naturally to give the offense something different to look at, something different that they have to use proper technique to block, something to talk about on the sideline, and something to worry about. Sometimes it can confuse them. You can certainly take advantage in the pass rush games of some protection schemes, and you can take advantage of a weak blocker. So all of those things are important. Our guys like to do it as a change-up. We rush a lot one-on-one, but during the course of a ball game, on 3rd down and long or 2nd and long, we're going to give them a pass rush game. Now that's what it's trying to accomplish. There's 2 things that are so vital in a pass rush game or stunt. These are must. If you don't do these, you have no chance for success. The first one is that your defensive lineman or linebacker, if you're using a linebacker in the game, it's the same philosophy. The first rusher must get in the gap between the 2 adjacent linemen. If he does not do that, the game has no chance. I'll try to demonstrate what I mean, and there will be game clips of all of these games from actual Vikings footage showing you the proper techniques and how they can be successful. If I could get the players out here now, I'll introduce them to you, and we'll get into the rhythm. The first young man is Tony Williams, a rookie nose tackle from Memphis University. Then we have Jason Fisk, our starting nose tackle from Stanford, and Stalin Collinet, a rookie defensive end and tackle from Boston College. Now, we're going to demonstrate to you just by walking through, and then you'll see it on the clip, exactly what's got to happen in a game. If I could get Tony as a left offensive guard and Stalin as a left offensive tackle, with your back to the camera, and get Jason over here as a defensive tackle somewhere on Tony Williams. If we're going to run a pass rush game and Jason's going to hit this gap, he has got to get between these 2 players. Now, I'm going to be Jason's teammate. I'm going to be the other rusher. And we don't care what kind of game it is. We're going to show you that if Jason can get between them and I loop around as the second guy, they can't block us. Okay, Jason, if you would, just step between those 2 blockers. Just step up in there. All right, I've started here. Now, if Jason gets in that position, see where he is? He's between them. He's got his pads turned a little bit. That's all he needs. If I start to go around Stalin now, I was rushing here, and I start this way. Everybody stay where they are. I'm coming around Jason. Okay, I'm going inside. Now, if this offensive team uses zone or switch protection on games, somewhere as I make my moves, Stalin and Tony are going to say switch. As they switch, Stalin tries to get Jason. Stay right there. And Tony tries to get me. Now, if Jason's done a great job of getting in that gap, he's going to ricochet off of Stalin, and he's going to have clearance to the quarterback for the sack. He had to get the gap penetration. All right, stand back where you were, please. Let's go through this pretty good. If Jason doesn't get in that gap. Start in there, Jason. Slide, Tony, and stop him. Get over there in front. No, in front of him. There you go. Just the regular set. Do it again. Get over in front of him, Tony, not turn. Get over there and stop him. There we go. Jason doesn't get that gap. Now I start around Jason on our pass rush game. When I get to here and Stalin wants to say switch to Tony, now it's an easy what? Tony can slide, Stalin can get down in front of Jason, and now they have gotten us. They've blocked us. The game has been worthless. What has happened, our two rushmen have gone sideways, and the quarterback sitting back there with the ball in his hand safely in the pocket. So let me emphasize once again, and you'll see it on the clips, and this tackle or guard or whatever he is must get penetration between those two adjacent linemen. You say, how does he get that? Well, first of all, he has to line up where he has a chance. If Jason were to line up inside of Tony and try to penetrate this gap, he probably doesn't have a chance. If he were to line up way off the football in a balanced stance, in a reading defense, and we're going to run a game where he's going to penetrate that gap between Tony and Stalin, he probably doesn't have a chance. He needs to be aligned in this gap as much as possible. You say, well, that gives it away. Well, our defenses at Minnesota, our players line up here in the gaps to pass rush, to jet. So Jason can line up here. Foot, hand, placement, all that type of thing is not necessary. If he just comes off the ball with full velocity on the snap and gets in any way between them, like this, turn, get like this, it doesn't matter. When they try to switch, we're clear. I'm going to be free for the sack. All right? Jason, if you would again, step between Stalin and Tony. Now I come in there. Now come off the line a little bit, Stalin. Okay, now, they're not a switching team. They're a man team, and we've delayed our rush, which we'll get to in a minute. Now when I start around, Jason's going to go on. Tony's going to block him. Stalin's going to go with me, man to man, either behind him or come in front if Jason's upfield far enough. What happens now, they're not switching. Our game can still be successful if we're doing a great job of individual one-on-one rushing. What you got to understand is sometimes the lineman is not used to going that deep with the pressure of Jason's rush, and he'll lose him deep into the rush. The other thing is this blocker who come around can easily, even though he's got me man-to-man, they are not switching, when I come around, it's easy for Stalin to get picked off by Jason and lose me and me to come clean here. So no matter what kind of protection they're using, you need deep penetration of the first rusher for it to work. That is the number one concept, okay? Number two, the second rusher, his partner, his teammate that's working in the game or the stunt with him, must sell his rush where he is lined up. He has to come off the ball just like he's going to rush one-on-one in that area and whip that offensive blocker like he's been doing since the game started, the same takeoff, the same pad level. He can't pop up like I'm going somewhere else. He's got to have the same initial start into his rush, and he has to delay and not come around his partner until his partner's in that gap. So we'll try to walk through this, and let me explain it. Jason, if you would step in there. Now, Jason's in there. I've started upfield. I'm not going to say whether I'm going to take 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, or 4 steps. I'm going to field Jason in that gap between the two blockers, and when he is, as soon as he is, then I can come around. Not before that. Let's go back again, please. Now, when we start the game, as I start upfield, Jason goes. If he's in that gap right now, I don't have to take any more steps up the field. I may have only taken 1 step or 2, depending on my stance. As soon as I feel him in that gap, I start around. Come back again, please. Another point. If I start and I come off any different than I have, Stalin's going to stay in there in that gap and protect and stop Jason. He's not going to get the gap penetration, and we're not going to have a game. Stalin's got to be Stalin must be concentrating on blocking me. He can't know that I'm not going to do my regular rush here so that he can help on Jason. Now, if we get a rush where Jason hits that gap, and I start upfield and Jason's in the gap, the second part of your second rusher that's coming around is when you come around, be as low and as tight to your teammate as you can. Demo, I'm going to walk. When I come around Jason, I'm going to try to come right off of his tail as tight as I can and around this blocker so that I can go directly to the quarterback. A common mistake a lot of the rushmen make is when they come around their partner, they take 1 extra step laterally. See what I did away from that blocker? I've given that quarterback more time to release the football, to look at the pattern and see it develop. I'm trying to get to the quarterback and get a sack. To do that, when I come around him, it's got to be tight. I got to do the same thing that we talked about in fundamental, sink the hip, point that toe right at the quarterback. And then the other thing that we demonstrated in other tapes about drills and fundamentals, if I come clean on this game, I'm the guy that's free. There could be a back sitting there. There could be another lineman that's kicked over there. I got to be ready to whip another blocker. Just because the two of you made your game work at the line, when you come clean, have awareness, have vision, be ready to rip, swim, club, butt, or jump over the other blocker. Those are the elements of a pass rush game or stunt that are must. Okay, gentlemen, if you just step aside for a minute, I'll continue to talk, okay? And then we'll come back to you. What has to happen now in these games, they must be done in that manner, and we're going to demonstrate the different types of stunts and games that we use. Let me explain to you. The ones that we're going to demo are done in a delayed manner. The first rusher hits the gap. The second rusher delays, times it up, gets the feel. Then he comes around his teammate. Sometimes, in some games, we'll put the word quick in front of it in our defenses, especially in blitzes. If we put the word quick in front of it, that means we don't want anybody to hesitate. The first one goes, the second one comes immediately after one step. We do it right now. In other words, we're not hesitating. That's a change up also from the way we were doing it. Sometimes we will do these with grabs. If we see a blocker on offense by studying film, which you may not have the opportunity to do, and by intense scouting, if we can grab a lineman and jerk him out of his position where he's setting to pass protect, we'll do some games with grabs, but most of ours are delayed. Sometimes we'll see offensive linemen that have big splits, and we'll just try to pick one blocker and have the other teammate come around. But most of ours will be delayed, and they'll be quite good if we first guy gets penetration and the second one hesitate and comes around very tight. Now, as you're coming around, be sure that you're ready to use these. We talked about the violent use of arms and hands. When you come around, you can't come around there like you don't have any arms and hands. You're going to have to club, rip, swim, slap, use your hands any way you can to free yourself from the blocker. They will try to switch it or stay man. You've got to use those to get off of them. The first game that we're going to introduce and demonstrate to you, and the clips will follow, is the TE game, or the tackle first and the end second. We call it a text. It doesn't matter what you call games, just so that your players can learn them and understand them and communicate them to each other. The terminology has nothing to do with the game. Now, in this one, the tackle's going to go first. He's going to penetrate the guard tackle gap, and he needs to try to get to the back of the offensive tackle. For example, Jason, are you ready? Jason's the defensive left tackle against Tony Williams. Tony's the right offensive guard, Stalin's the right offensive tackle, and I'm playing defensive left end when I get ready to it. Now, Jason, in our stances, you will notice his outside foot is back. We do this with almost all of our linemen for pass rush purposes. What it does, and we'll demonstrate this real quickly, switch your stance, Jason. If Jason's inside foot is back, this gap is where Jason's trying to go on pass rush, whether it be a game or not. With his outside foot back, there we go. Now, remember, he's on the left. His first step with that back foot starts him into that gap and starts a natural turn of the hip and the shoulders. He's ready to get into that gap now. Go back. If we started the other way and his first step with his back foot, which it normally is, then he has to kick outside and shuffle by that guy a little bit more. So you'll see our linemen in the clips with their outside foot back. Now, when Jason starts his move, Stalin, you set back like I'm rushing outside, please. Normal. Set back a little bit tighter. When Jason starts his move, once he starts his rip, he's trying to get to the back of Stalin. If he can get to the back of him and get between them there, we're in clear sailing. Now, the number one move that we teach, and this is a must for this game, Jason's going first between this guard and tackle. He must slap and rip. We don't want to swim or an arm over. We cannot do that. If Jason swims and gets up high, it's easy for Tony to recognize that, to stop Jason, hit him right in the chest, knock him out to Stalin, and pick me up when I come around. We always teach the TE game with the tackle going first with a real good reach and a real good rip and turning of the pads, and that helps him get in that gap, to get skinny and to get narrow, and then we've got a chance. Okay, Jason, let me see you step through it again. Let's go on the first sound. You guys just set, and we'll see Jason try to get that gap. Hut. Right there. Whoa, good. See what he did? Got in that gap, he ripped, and he turned. Now, whether you turn inside or outside doesn't matter. Some players in this stance, it'll be a rip, and it'll be a reach and a rip, and his pads will be turned into the guard. Other players could reach, and with power, they might just rip, and they might turn out to the guard. It doesn't matter which way. Our pads are down. I'm getting between these two blockers. Now we've got a chance for the pass rush game to be successful. Okay, now, in calling this pass rush game, We would like to do it so that the center, and this is important now, you've got to plan your rush games when you get ready to do it and put it in your game plan. We'd like to do it with the center protecting to his offensive left and away from our pass rush TE game. The reason being that if we call it and the center is going to the right, now start in there, Jason, to where we're doing the game. All right, stay right there, please. I come around Jason as a defensive end. He's gotten good penetration. I've timed him up. I've delayed it. Here I come. When I come around Jason, Tony may try to switch it, but he may not have to. If he knows the center's coming this way, Tony can keep pushing on Jason. And now I come in here. I've got a center I've got to work over. If that happens, it's the thing I told you about a while ago. The second player that's coming around has got to be ready to be violent with his hands and his arms. And plus, if Tony stays with Jason, just walk up the field 2 or 3 steps together. Now Stalin's out there. I've come in here. If he stays with him, which he will do, at the center's sliding this way sometimes, I've got a lot of room as a defensive end now to maneuver on this center to make a good move and still get to the quarterback. So the pass rush game, the TE, is better if we can do it away from where the center is turning. But if we happen to call it and the center's turning this way, we can still run it. But the end when he comes in here has got to be a real factor on this player, okay? Now there's 2 things can happen, and we may have done it well enough a while ago, but let's do it with a switch, with a zone. On the first sound, Jason's going to start up. I'm going to delay it. I'm going to come under, and you guys try to switch it. You ready? Here we go. Hut! As soon as he's in the gap, I'm coming around. I'm coming tight. When they switch it, Jason's always the guy that comes off, okay? Let's walk through it one more time. I think they've got it, and I think it's okay. Jason's the guy, okay? All right, one more time. Here we go. We ready? Yeah. Hut! Okay, you got the idea of the TE game. All right, now, if they're staying man, if they're not going to switch it, it's so delayed they could stay in man protection. Now Tony's not going to switch. He's going to take Jason up the field. Come on, Tony, block me. But as he takes Jason up the field, he is a guard, and guards aren't used to working this deep. They do most of their stuff at the line. Once I get up to here, if I'm using my hands and making good moves, I could probably lose Tony, and I can still get the sack as a defensive tackle, okay, against man protection. The other thing is, if Tony and Jason are way up the field, walk up there, please, and I started with Stalin, and now I start underneath, even if I don't pick Stalin with Jason, Stalin has a very unusual move for a tackle to come down and stay with me if I'm using my hands and arms and turning and ripping and clubbing and getting off of him to go to the quarterback, okay? Those are the key elements of the TE game. Now let's come back to it if you would. To me, this is the best pass rush game in football. If you're coaching offense, it's the hardest one to block. What has to happen is that when the ball's snapped, if we'd line up again, and Jason starts in that gap, Tony has to kick out there to stop him. He can't turn. Give me a kick out step, Tony. Slide out there and stop him. That's a must. Come on, stop him. He's got to get to there to stop Jason. If he does, it sets Jason up for individual one-on-one moves to go back inside. I can promise you that, get back in your stance, please. I can promise you that an offensive guard, once he puts his hand on the ground, and they all do in our league, even on 3rd and long situations or nickel, once his hand is down, if Jason stems or slides out here, he really has his thought process going. I've got to kick out there, and a lot of times they overset, which sets up the inside move by Jason one-on-one. Plus, they just lean, and they don't get him stopped on the rip. What I've got to be sure that we do when he gets wide is that as a defensive end, I've got to get off and get up the field. Otherwise, Stalin with Jason that wide will set in there. He'll be looking at me, but he'll have his inside hand, and he'll be stopping Jason if I'm not really barreling and jetting and coming off the field like I'm going to rush the quarterback in the normal manner from outside in and go to him. Okay? That's a must. All right, come back. We think we're clear on all of that. Not a question. Okay, let's demo it one more time. One more TE. Try to switch it. Stay man. You guys decide what you're going to do. We're going to give you a little bit of tempo this time, okay? Down and ready on the first sound. I'll just be an old stand-up in. Hut! There we go. When Tony switched to me, Jason is the clean player, and that's usually what happens. He gets more of the sacks than the end does. The pointer's on Derek Alexander, our left tackle, working inside now, and Fernando Smith standing up like a linebacker. It'd be the same thing if that was a superb outside linebacker. Derek gets great penetration in the gap in the guard and tackle when he splits them. Fernando's clean to come around, and Derek ricochets off for the sack. Just what we talked about in the pass rush games. I will run it back to show you the reach and the rip, which is the best way to get there. Now he's in the gap, and they're done. Another good point here is the toughness part of it. Derek gets bounced around a little, but he's got great determination. He ricocheted off that big tackle and accelerated to that quarterback. The pointer's on 94. Pig Golf, our defensive tackle, is going to penetrate. Number 82, Dwayne Clemens, is going to come under the end. When he does, he's got to be aware of the center. Sometimes they've slid that way. It makes the game a little tougher, but watch Dwayne against the center. I'll repeat it. When he comes inside, the guard switches. Now he's got to split the guard and center. Good determination. Good awareness. Bounced off the center. Got a great hit on the quarterback. This is a TE game between John Randall and Fernando Smith. We have great awareness. There's a running back staying in. Watch what develops. As you can see, Johnny got the gap that we want. Fernando sold the upfield rush, which we want. John's aware of the back sitting in there. We work it every day in rush drills. Gets off of him. Fernando came clean. Even though the guard knew the back was back there to help, he stayed with Randall, wasn't aware of Fernando coming in. A real good rush. Perfect example of a TE game. As we look at this pass rush, Fernando Smith, our left end, John Randall, our left tackle, are going to execute a perfect delayed TE. John's going to go first in that guard tackle gap. Fernando's going to jet up the field, setting up his tackle, showing him that he's rushing outside, and then come underneath. A very good TE example. We'll rewind it and show you how both of them get in on the sack. Also, another coaching point here. We talked about the center sliding that way. He's not a factor in this game. Even though he's turning that way, they have the advantage of 3-on-2. Watch the center. He's so concerned with Johnny, he's following Johnny up the field, and Fernando comes under clean. The center didn't even look for him. Very good TE game. The second pass rush game we'd like to demonstrate is the ET. We call it an edge. You can call it a lot of things, but the end goes first, and the tackle comes second. Just the opposite of the TE that we just demoed for you. The defensive end must get penetration between the guard and tackle. He is trying to get penetration and trying to get to the back of the offensive guard. If he does, then his teammate, the defensive tackle, can wrap around very tight, very close, and get the sack. It's imperative that him trying to get penetration, he can't give away his stance to the offensive tackle. He can't line up any differently than he has in normal pass rush situations where the offensive tackle will have a key. He'll know that the defensive end's coming inside, and he'll set inside and stop him. And if he stops the defensive end's penetration, we've lost the effectiveness of the game. So our defensive end must be aware that he has the same stance, same alignment as he does on normal rush situations. The defensive tackle, that's the second guy coming around now. This time he's coming around his teammate, the end. He's got to hesitate. He's got to delay. He's got to sell the inside A-gap, center guard area rush. Make the offensive guard look at him. Make the offensive guard lean. Be a threat to him in the A-gap, and all guards know they can't get beaten in the center guard gap or the quarterback will get sacked. Make him lean inside. As he does that, he creates more room for the defensive end who's coming inside on the snap and trying to get the penetration. Then the rest of the game goes exactly like the TE. First man penetrates, second man hesitate, feel it, come around when your partner's in the gap. The thing the tackle cannot do is look outside, and we're going to demonstrate that to you. Okay, we ready? If we can get the same alignment, we'll keep it the same for simplicity as the TE. Jason is still the defensive tackle. I'm the defensive end. Now, my goal as a defensive end, and I'm not going to get in the stance because I look funny in the stance, when I come off the football, whether it be 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, the longer the yardage situation is, I might be able to delay my move a little bit more. If a team is using 7-step drops as a passing game, or 5 steps even, I can delay it a little bit more. If it's being thrown quicker than that, 3-step drops, we have to do it very quickly. But the normal drop in our league is 5 steps. This can be delayed. As a defensive end, when I start my inside penetration now, trying to get to the back of that guard, Tony, as I do so, if Stalin does a real good job as a right tackle and starts to stop me, if I keep going and keep penetrating and somehow get between them, I don't have to hit Tony very hard. I certainly don't have to hurt him. I just got to get my pads between them. If I can get to here and Stalin's got me, if I can just get to here in any way, and Jason comes around, when they switch it, Now I'm off clean for the sack. What normally happens is the first penetrator, the first man in the stunt, usually is the one that comes clean. Now let's explain a couple other things. In planning your game, just like we said we'd rather do the TE that we talked about a minute ago, we'd rather do that away from the center. Because when we did the TE and the end came under, if the center is sitting there, he's got a chance to block him. In this case, if the center is turning this way, and we need one more player, but I'm going to simulate it for you. If I'm sliding and checking to help on this side, Jason, you be the end now, would you please? Now Jason comes in here, just walk into the gap. Everybody hold right there. Okay, that's the end coming inside. Here sits the center, okay? Now I'm going to be the defensive tackle. I'm head faking, I'm bluffing, I'm staying in this A gap. When I start around Jason, go ahead, stay in the gap. If these two try to switch it, we really haven't hurt ourselves running this game because the center that was setting in here really is not a factor, okay? He's not going to be a factor. Let's go back and get in again, see if I can show you what I'm trying to talk about. Get out there, Jason. If I'm sliding here, we could use one more player. Come on, Jason. I'm sliding. I'm probably going to stay in here and look at Jason. Now, I might get help on Jason, but if this game is done properly as he comes in there, I'm looking at Jason. As I go around as a defensive tackle, if Stalin doesn't get me, that tackle's way in, that center is way inside, and I still have a very good chance to come clean. Okay, in the game? Now, let's go back. So, if we're doing pass rush, these two games, these are the two major ones that we use to try to get a change-up and get to the quarterback. If the center's sliding this way in their protection, we want the tackle and end game over there. If the center's sliding this way, we want the end tackle game here and the tackle and end game over there. Now, it could happen that the center is just popping off the line